Hey guys, Francesca here once again, and this week I don't have a deck video for you guys. Instead, I want to talk to you guys about the state of the union when it comes to Chronicle, a little bit about how things have been going down, and also the future of the game. This is something that kind of comes from the heart. I was going to kind of script what I want to say, but instead, I just kind of want to talk to you guys about the game and where things are and where I am as a content creator. So, Chronicle has been in decline for the last few months, actually for the last little while. If we look at the Steam DB kind of player trackers, you can see that quite clearly if we look at 1 month, and then 3 months, and then 6 months. And I guess you have to ask yourself where things went wrong for Chronicle and what happened with Jagex. So we'll start, I guess, with where I think things have kind of started to decline with the game. And I think a large part of that was launch. And now I really enjoyed Chronicle launch. I thought it was good fun from a dedicated player perspective. But from a new player perspective, maybe that wasn't the case. You know, I was playing Chronicle through their open beta and through launch. And I mean, the game launched without a spectator client so that people couldn't really organize their own tournaments, though we did try. It launched without any sort of chat. So, you know, you could have a friends list, but it was completely pointless because there was no way of, you know, communicating with someone, you know, if you add them after a game to say good game or, you know, have a little bit of kind of interaction and social aspect in a game, which is very important for multiplayer games, you know, a sense of community. They didn't really have much in the way of single player other than maybe tutorials. And even then the tutorials weren't streamlined. It's something that they kind of added after the fact of making the game more presentable to new players. And also there wasn't, you know, a mobile client, which is acceptable, you know, as long as it gets developed later down the line. On top of that, I think for new players, a lot of them felt that the rate at which you earned packs as a free-to-play player, was very slow. I mean, we got a lot of comments on the subreddit for players basically saying, you know, we don't have a lot of time to invest in playing, and it kind of feels like I'm barely getting a pack a day. So, you know, I'm not really expanding my collection. And so because you're not expanding your collection, there's nothing really new to do. You're just kind of playing the same decks over and over. And that can be quite tedious. On top of that, I think there were a lot of mechanics in the game, which whilst if you had a good collection, you could kind of work around, were particularly unfun for new players. A lot of the grief mechanics, for example. I mean, we had this whole situation with Ogre Brute, which was a card you could play slot 1, chapter 1, and remove your opponent's base attack and put them down to 1, which for new players was completely crippling because, you know, you don't have a lot of cards to work around that. I mean, you had to kind of be lucky and draw KTP, and even then it was kind of contradictory any kind of strategy you maybe had as a new player. I mean, we had Stagger on Ariane, which removed base attack. You had Grief Linza running Rampant, where she would Dust Devil you. So again, removing base attack, removing weapons, just basically making the game distinctly unfun. And I mean, we also had Hope Devourer, where Ozan players were also removing base attack. And these were all very, very prevalent cards in the meta. And for new players to go up against these cards, I think was decisively rubbish. It kind of, I think, turned a lot of players off from Chronicle when they were maybe making their first impressions and stopped them from maybe wanting to continue. I mean, you guys obviously are still here, but I think for a lot of players, you know, that was very frustrating and something to deal with that. On top of that, you kind of had Jagex announcing things that never really happened. I mean, they should never have announced that they were doing, you know, a $10,000 invitational tournament. It did get players excited to play the game. It got people, you know, really competing in ranked for the hopes of being invited. I know I, for one, was interested in the potential to compete, and, you know, who wouldn't be? But, you know, the game didn't even have, like, friends chat. It didn't have spectator. How are you going to have an invitational if you can't even spectate games? There's definitely a problem here. And I mean, I know games like Hearthstone kind of got away with, you know, having this, not having spectators straight away, but at least they had chat and, you know, not having mobile straight away. But that's Blizzard, and Blizzard, you know, they can afford to do something like that. Jagex, that really wasn't the case. And I think that whilst, you know, the devs, their heart and soul were in the game, I think that they kind of came too soon a little bit when it comes to Chronicle. And, like, part of me wonders whether this was pressure from the higher ups in Jagex to, you know, get the game out there, to not be spending time and money developing something which had a very small player base. And at Jagex, the devs are always saying, you know, we're waiting for the game to be in the right state before we advertise. We don't want to, you know, advertise too soon when the game's not, you know, as good as it could be. But then you shouldn't really be launching the game if you're not ready to advertise. And it kind of got to the point where they were like, oh, you know, once everything's in, we'll advertise. Once everything is in, we'll advertise. And I know myself as a content creator, I was kind of sitting there thinking, okay, once everything is in, then, you know, we'll see that advertising push, which will help me as a content creator. Because although there are a lot of good content creators in Chronicle, I would probably say that I was the only consistent one in terms of regularly making Chronicle content. The other guys, you know, they're great. They make great content, but they kind of do it when they feel like it. So I was always thinking, you know, things will get better. And I mean, when I first started making Chronicle videos, the viewership was really, really good. If you compare, you know, viewership then to viewership now, there's definitely been a decline, which I think coincides with the decline of the game. Previously, I could easily get 1,000 views on a video in a day. Now, you know, we're lucky if we get a couple hundred. And I don't think that's lack of quality content, though. You know, you can correct me on this one. I think that's just to do with the kind of decrease in the player base as time goes on, and lack of kind of hype, and lack of kind of advertising, and lack of new players coming in and trying out Chronicle. So going back to my point of, you know, maybe there was pressure from Jagex to push the game out, and that's why the game kind of was launched when it wasn't really ready to be launched. Jagex does not have the best track record. You know, member Stellar Dawn? Oh, member. Member Fun Orb? Oh, yeah, member. To quote South Park and the member berries. Like, let's look at Jagex track records with games that never came into fruition or got cancelled. So Stellar Dawn was like Mechscape, their sci-fi Mechscape. We have Fun Orb, you know, their online Java-based gaming thing, you know, like Miniclip, or basically a website to play mini games. 8 Realms, for example, War of Legends, Transformers Universe. You know, there's been a lot of games that they've either been publishing or working on that have just been completely canned. And even like Block and Load, I think, doesn't have as much love as it used to. Their shooting Minecrafty game. And it kind of seems to me that Jagex, they like to start projects, but they very rarely put the time and effort in to finish them, or the money. And I don't think it's a lack of funds, because I do think that RuneScape, especially RuneScape 3, which has a lot of microtransactions, does make them a fair amount of money, to the point where I think they could afford to spend more time and money developing Chronicle into something special. I mean, now it's obviously going to cost more because the launch didn't go so well, but there is potential there. I just don't think they want to. And I think, especially since, was it Zongji Holding purchased Jagex back in September 2016, I think they're much more interested in profits, and profits now than future profits. And so I don't think Jagex as a company is willing to, you know, dedicate money and resources into developing Chronicle into something special, because I do think Chronicle as a game is very interesting. I think it's got mechanics I've never seen before in other sorts of card games, and I do think it did originally have a lot of potential. It's part of the reason, you know, I'm such a big fan of the game, and I've spent so much time making content and enjoying making content. I think that's important. I do enjoy making Chronicle content, but with the state of the game now, it's hard for me to justify it, you know, and it's hard for me to feel that excitement and that hype that I used to feel going into play when, you know, we had this situation of complete radio silence from Jagex as developers in regards to everything. So, for example, they announced, you know, we're gonna each week post some cards that we want to buff and get community feedback, and then the next week, you know, implement those changes. So we'll have like a rolling state of card buffs. You know, then we saw Merchant move to old school RuneScape. So our community manager then left. Merchant, shout out to you and congratulations on your move to old school RuneScape. I'm sure you're going to do great things. We saw team downsize. So a lot of, you know, members who were previously working on Chronicle have been reassigned to different projects, for example. So there's less people developing at this point, which ultimately I feel is going to just cause the game to more or less die. What they need to do is, you know, keep people developing and get those last few features, and then start to add new cards and new exciting content and bring players back. And I think part of this, again, is because I think they were originally going to have this rolling plan of, you know, 1 week updates, and then I think maybe Jagex pulled the rug from underneath the developers' feet. And, you know, I think the developers are very dedicated to the game. I think they did, you know, have a lot of love for Chronicle and were passionate about what they did. And I feel like, you know, for some of them, Jagex kind of turned around and said, you know, nope, sorry, but not sorry. This is no longer going to be a thing. And I can imagine that's really emotional for a person to deal with. So I think that, like, you know, we have been a little bit harsh on the devs. And I think you maybe need to look at the higher-ups more so than the devs, although, you know, I understand, you know, wanting to at least hear something from Jagex about it. The fact that they just didn't say anything is pretty goddamn worrying for a community, and I feel that it's a shame. So what have we had recently? Where are we now, I guess, is the question. Well, they've announced that they want to do a make your own campaign feature in the Steam Workshop. There's been a balance patch of a few cards that, you know, honestly, it's been a long time coming. The last balance patch was, what, the potions patch, which was well over a month ago. And now there's been a balance patch, which has introduced a bunch of bugs. They've obviously cancelled the invitational. They've come out and said, hey, this $10,000 invitational that we talked about and then promptly, like, stopped talking about, that's actually officially cancelled. They've also officially cancelled mobile development. They basically said that with the size of the team, mobile isn't something that they are looking to develop right now. So it's like, what are they trying to develop right now? Because honestly, to revive Chronicle, it needs something big. And to me, it doesn't sound like Jagex is doing something big. It sounds like they're, you know, for me, at least it feels like they're kind of slowly but surely phasing the game out. I mean, this make your own campaign thing, it feels like this is kind of a last-ditch effort of throwing a bone to the community. Oh, we can't make content, but you can make your own content. And I feel like, you know, you know, prove me wrong, Jagex, prove me wrong that that's not what the plan is with the campaign. But as it stands, I'm not hopeful, you know. I'm not hopeful for the future of Chronicle. I think things will continue to decline, and I don't see the big revival that I know a lot of the community hope for happening. I think if they were going to do that, what they need to do is, you know, sit down and have a big patch, a patch that releases maybe like 100 new cards or something. You know, they've got 400 at the moment, bring it up to 500 cards, have lots of new cards come into the game with nice polished mechanics, and then, you know, add the make your own campaign feature to tide people across, or you maybe make a new campaign or focus on a new legend or a new expansion or something like that. But I can't see Jagex with the size of the team doing that and investing into Chronicle after, you know, everything has been so reduced over the last few months, whatever. And so as a content creator, I kind of, for now at least, I'm hanging up my Chronicle hat. And, you know, that's something that's really sad to say. I mean, this is what, my 30-second or so Chronicle video, if you call it that, and for now, at least, I think it's going to be my last. I'm getting all sad now. So I want to say thank you to the community. I want to thank you guys so much for all of your support with these videos, for, you know, continually tuning in and week out to watch me play a card game and talk about decks and talk about strategy and, you know, try dungeoneering and inevitably fuck up when I forget that Ling the Assassin spends all of my gold, for example. Like, it's been a lot of fun to make these videos for you guys. It's been a lot of fun to see all of your positive reactions to the videos, and it's been a lot of fun playing Chronicle for these last few months. But with the state of the game, I no longer feel like I'm enjoying it in the same way, and I don't really want to invest time into a game that's slowly declining, especially as a content creator. You know, you want to grow, you want to improve, and I don't think that Chronicle is the game that allows me to do that right now. Whether it will be in the future remains to be seen. You know, I would hope that Jagex will prove me wrong, and if they do, I'm definitely interested in coming back and revisiting this game. So I guess then you're asking, you know, what are we going to do with the slot? What are we going to do with the Thursday slot? And basically the plan for now is that I've started playing a new collectible card game, and, you know, I'm hopeful with this one at least that things will maybe develop a little better. So some of you will know I'm a big fan of Smite, Hi-Rez's Pantheon-based MOBA, and they've just entered closed alpha with a card game based off of that game. So it just feels very familiar, and that is Smite Tactics. Smite Tactics is a tactical collectible card game. People have kind of likened it to chess in the way that you play it. You have kind of a leader who's kind of like your king. You move them around the board. You summon monsters and try and defeat the other person's leader. And going out on the channel today, I'll have a beginner's guide to tactics. So if you're interested in, you know, seeing what the game is about and then maybe signing up to try and get access to the alpha, do keep an eye out on the channel. That will be going out this week, and then we'll do some deck strategies for that and stuff next week. So we're going to keep card gaming. On top of that, you know, we have lots of co-op content for the channel, which maybe you guys haven't checked out already, but if you haven't, you know, do have a look at that. We've got a lot of multiplayer versus kind of group stuff with me and the rest of the killer bits. Just kind of having a laugh with your friends as you do, you know, so less just me and more other bits. And I realize, you know, that's definitely diluting the quality of the content if there's other people there. No, it's not just me and I'm super amazing. No, I'm kidding, but there is that content for you guys to check out if you haven't already. But yeah, that's kind of it for this video. Thanks for watching, you guys. Let me know what you think of the state of Chronicle in the comments below, whether you agree, whether you disagree. If you have anything to add to the discussion, I'd love to hear your guys' opinion as well. Beyond that, I'll hopefully see you in a couple hours with the tactics video, and you can get excited about that as well, because it's a game I'm really hype about. I mean, we've already had in the week it's been in closed alpha, we've had 2 patches, you guys. We have had 2 patches, fixing bugs and balancing the game, and I feel like 2 patches in a week, I feel spoilt after the last kind of month of Chronicle. So I'm excited for it. I think Hi-Rez, although they initially had a shaky start with the development of their games in terms of cancelling stuff like Tribes and Global Agenda, with Smite and with Paladins, they've been very consistent, and I think they've kind of turned over a new leaf, the kind of thing that I want Jagex to actually do. And so I'm very happy about this. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next video, hopefully. Have a great day. Bye!